Ted Lasso is one of the popular shows that's on air right now, and it's nearing the end of its final season. You may find yourself seeing different clips of it and not sure if you want to watch it or not. So today, I'm going to be telling you why I feel it's one of my favorite shows and why you should be watching Ted Lasso. I'm Zach, and this is Nerd is the Word. There are so many different aspects of Ted Lasso that makes it unique, and first I want to discuss the humor. It feels that each character that you see throughout the show represents a different type of humor. For example, Ted makes a ton of puns and obscure references that sometimes you get, sometimes you don't. I've had to look up a couple, but most of the time I find the puns hilarious. Now that is my type of humor. But then also you've got Beard, who is just odd. He is that friend in the friend group that never responds to the chat and goes on these wild adventures, and you hear about him later and your mind is just blown. And he offers random commentary out of nowhere, awkward looks. His humor is very awkward like. And Roy is the very dry humor. He's very grumpy. A lot of his humorous elements and comedic points are not talking to him, meaning leave him alone. He growls at people. But also he has these one-liners like that he is fancied Julie Andrews, and it's great. Like, he's very not comedic, but as with most of the show, his one-liners that are just there and gone are so funny. And then you've got Rebecca, who is a very authoritative, dominating presence, and her humor is very in your face. It's not meant to be necessarily comedic at all times, but it is, again, a different type of humor. And each character, whether intentionally or not, although it does feel intentional, does represent different humor bases. So it's not like just one type. If you're not into puns like I am, that's okay. There's going to be plenty of other moments that we feel like, or I feel like you're going to laugh, because it isn't always puns or it isn't always obscure references. As someone who's struggled with mental health, anxiety, depression, and by all research and all accounts, it's on the rise globally and especially nationally here in the United States, Ted Lasso is maybe the best depiction and treatment of mental health in any show or movie that I've personally seen. From its brutal realism on how panic attacks feel, at least for me, and how anxiety can impact someone who normally has no reason to be anxious, or rather is not used to it, and then it just, like that, it's there, or the panic just comes out of nowhere. It's painfully real, and it might be a little uncomfortable if you've experienced anxiety, but it also is not used as a joke. It is taken very seriously, and I might say is the biggest theme in the whole show, is the different ways that mental health can present itself and mental health issues can arise. They address the stigma around therapy from Ted's point of view as someone who had a bad experience with marriage counseling, and he says it right to the therapist, the team therapist. He doesn't believe in it, that it's nonsense, that it doesn't help, and yet he sees all the players around him that go and see out of necessity and out of precaution, they improve their mental health. Colin is a strong and capable man. He repeats it all the time, a mantra that he learned. Danny's yips are cured, and he's able to play football again. Among many other examples of the different players, it shows how therapy is not a one-size-fits-all, and how there's different tactics and different techniques for different people. And even going further, the therapist goes to a therapist. And in this day and age where so many people need to talk to someone and maybe don't have someone, or maybe just want confidentiality or someone to just listen, therapists don't have it all figured out. And I love that they display that the therapist doesn't pretend to know everything, and that she actually goes and complains and vents about Ted to her therapist. And then you can see Rebecca and Ted's friendship, or maybe more, we'll see how they decide to go with that route, forming, and Rebecca finally realizing that Ted is not just a goof that can be fired and tank the team, but someone with real emotions and not someone that should be played around with, is when she realizes his struggles with mental health. And it's heavily hinted at that she has gone through her own troubles in a similar situation with divorce, although Rupert is an evil person and that's not exactly the same, but she recognizes the symptoms. She's clearly been through it, and she does help Ted, and it forms a bond that you probably can only experience with people that also know exactly what you're going through, or very similarly. And kind of adjacent to the mental health aspect is that so many people go through so many different life struggles in this show, and it's a very positive outlook going through that. One of my favorite quotes is when Ted says that the story doesn't end or begin in the dark forest, the fairy tale. It always is in the middle, and you have to get through the forest. Now, I definitely butchered that quote, but the sentiment is still the same. Ted is going through divorce, going through moving away from his kid. Roy is going through admittance that he's not as good as he was, and his career, or his initial career, is probably over. He's not one of the greats anymore. Despite being a very famous footballer, that can apply to so many different things. Slowing down in life, waking up in the morning with backaches and not being young. I mean, it's universally, broadly felt by a lot of people when you either realize you're not good anymore, you realize your dream is over, that you're not going to be a professional athlete, that you're not going to play at the college level. And instead of sulking for the rest of your life, he finds different careers. He's a color commentator. He then becomes a coach. Like, it's a very good message of just because something's over doesn't mean it's the end. Beard is in an incredibly toxic relationship, yet he doesn't leave it, because that happens in life. Friends, even your own self, could know the feeling of you shouldn't be with this person, but you can't help it. And I believe Beard says in his episode, for some reason, whenever he's with her, life is just a little more interesting, I believe is what he says. And sometimes that's all the justification people need to stay in bad relationships despite knowing how it's going to end. Jamie can be one of the most hated characters in the first season. Learn how bad his dad is to him. And that adds a whole new context. Again, real feeling life situations where you may not like a person. They may be acting awful to you and in general, and you have no idea what they're going through. It's not an excuse, but it adds a whole new layer to why they are the way they are. And it certainly showed that Roy knew somewhat of what he was going through, and it helped start their eventual bond to mentor-mentee. You know, I'm sure a lot of people can identify with an abusive parent, sadly, and Jamie is a good example of maybe you didn't develop the right way because of this, but it's never too late to right the ship. And while Ted is going through a pretty healthy-ish divorce, relatively speaking, Rebecca did not. She goes through a divorce with an absolutely evil person who manipulated her, cheated on her, and that's probably relatable for a lot of people as well. But the important thing is all of these struggles may feel very real to people, but they mostly have positive spins on the outlooks and how you can get through the struggles and keep going. And as they say, bugger on in the show. It's a very good message. And the two things I want to close out on are the specials. The Christmas special is one of the best episodes around Christmas that I've ever seen. It may be my absolute favorite, from the message of giving gifts and stuff to less fortunate, which is amazing. Anybody that does that, it's great. The nods to all of the different Christmas movies without being too over the top. It's just a really good time, a great episode, and also one of the most heartwarming moments for me in the show is when Higgins talks about how he only has like 2 people show up and the whole team shows up, showing the Ted Lasso effect on AFC Richmond. It's really awesome, a great holiday moment, underlying a message that if you can't be with family or you don't really have family, there's other ways to be close with people and have a family outside of blood. And lastly, the Beard episode. One, I left feeling I didn't like it the first time, or not that I didn't like it, it's just so jarring compared to the rest of the show. However, on rewatch, I still found the themes of Ted Lasso throughout. Especially, one thing that stuck with me is the 3 hooligans that are always in the bar. I honestly can't remember if they ever get named. May is always yelling at them. They get the night of their life thanks to Beard. They are poor by all accounts, barely scraping by, and have a love for a football team, which makes sports special in general because it gives them something to distract themselves. And Beard gives them an exclusive club, the ability to act like they're rich, and more importantly, he gives them the chance to go on AFC Richmond's field, something that Beard and a lot of professional athletes do every day, and you don't realize the sacredness of that. How insane it probably was for those fans, or, you know, it's obviously a TV show, but how real that would be for people who don't have much and get the ability to go on the field at night and kick a soccer ball for the team they absolutely love. And it really just helps to encapsulate why Ted Lasso is so special, that even in their most random, abnormal episode, the themes of positivity, of good feelings, even in sad, tragic, or down times are there. You just have to look for them. I hope I've convinced you to check out the show. It is one of my favorites. The episodes are short. You could watch 5 and not feel like it. They just keep going. Unfortunately, it is only 3 seasons, but with them keeping it at 3 seasons, you can tell it's not going to go sour. And it'll probably go down as one of the best dramedies TV shows, because it's definitely not exclusively a comedy of all time, or at least that, in my opinion, it's a top 5 show ever because of how present it is. It revolves around sports, which I love. It, the mental health, the characterization, the character development I haven't even been able to talk about is insane. Most characters go through good and bad development, and it's substantial from their first appearance. It's unique, it's great. Please check it out.